The Voice Teacher Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Woohoo! It's Friday. Well, we're recording on Friday, but you're probably going to see this on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever we get it out to you. You know, it's good times. Wait, what do we usually do for the opening? What do we do? Oh, I'm Aimee Gaines here with Sam Johnson for the interview. Welcome to the Voice Teacher Podcast. I'm Aimee Gaines here with Sam Johnson, and today we are going to talk about helping your students find authenticity through technique.
Yeah.
I just feel like, boom, you know?
It's such a good lead-in.
Such a good lead-in. Like that, you know?
Yeah.
That's all I need. Just bang on the piano and call it good. Oh,
Did something
Sam.
happen this week that made you want to talk about authenticity?
Yes, because I feel like that's what I've been talking to my students about all week. Because, okay, here's the thing. Last year, we had our showcase. And the theater that I rented, the sound was not good. It was terrible. And so I vowed that this year I would find a better place. So I found a better place. It's beautiful. And I'm showing pictures of it to my students. And I'm going, I can't wait for you all to sing here. It's going to be so pretty. And it's like there's acoustics and, you know, it's not like a dry black hole for their sound. And so I was so excited. And I just said, so then we're talking about, okay, well, you know, need to find a song that you want to perform. As I'm doing this, encouraging them, most of my students are a little more opinionated. You know, when you have really young students, they kind of don't know what they want to sing and they're kind of clueless. You're like telling them, you need to try this and you need to try this. Well, most of my students are a little older now. And so I'm helping them. So basically the guidance that I give them is, well, I want you to find something that speaks to your soul, something that you really want to sing, something that just you identify with. And so anyway, that's kind of led to this authenticity idea and just really bring that out. So what happened yesterday at 6 a.m, or my very first lesson of the day, I had this darling girl. She is about 20, wonderful girl. She's grown up mostly singing in choir, and she kind of has struggled with really finding a lot of color or depth in her voice. She's just kind of been very like
A voice that blends.
Yes, just a voice that blends. Nothing stands out about it, nothing like that really grabs you and goes, yeah, I feel you. So anyway, she wanted to work on this Christina Perri song, The Jar of Hearts. And, you know, very Christina Perri. I feel like I should play a snippet of just that song just so we can hear it.
You're gonna catch a cold from the ice upon your soul.
I don't need Christina Perri. I can just have Sam Johnson sing it. Hello. Yeah, so good. So anyway, so last week I had her experiment with Fry. And that's kind of scary for some choir singers because they're going, oh, I don't know if I can talk like this. Okay. And so we played around with that a lot. And so she said, you know what? I just had a couple hours last night and no one was home. And I just got out my guitar and I just sang and I just practiced that Fry and practiced the Fry over and over and like for 2 hours. And I was going, you're a rock star. What other student is really good at practicing for 2 hours at home? So anyway, she came back and she started trying it. And then I had her add on like start with the breathiness and or the edginess and fade it to a breathiness. So like and going through like all the kind of range of the sound. And she did it. And I kid you not, she and Christina Perri were like one. They sounded so similar. It was like she found that magic spot. And it just sounded like, you sound like a pop singer now. You sound like real, like the kind of voice that would sing this song. Not like somebody who's sung choir their whole life and is just kind of just singing a song with no emotion. So anyway, it was fabulous. It just made me so happy. I was going, yes.
I love that. It also really shows how when a voice is like balanced, depending on, it doesn't really matter what genre they're really good at. Like when you have a really good balanced voice, you can make these little shifts and start singing in a bunch of different genres. That's something I found yesterday with one of my students. She's an actress. She has a vocal performance degree, but she doesn't really consider herself a singer most of the time. So that's a big thing that we're working on because she's like one of the best singers that I work with. She kind of defaults to that hootier, more choir-like classical sound up above about a B4. So we've been working just a lot on chest voice, on connection and all of that. But up above that B4 still, it automatically went to like that oh kind of thing. And so for the first time, I think ever, I asked a student to collapse more in the back as they started going up above there. And she's like, well, I didn't even think about that because every voice teacher I've had before has always been more backspace, more backspace, more backspace. And then it's just this totally different sound quality. It doesn't sound stylistically appropriate. So we just kept going back and forth of like what would 100% of that backspace thing be? What would 5% of it be? And just continuing to kind of calibrate how to add a little bit more, a little bit less, because it feels so wrong to not add as much as she was doing. But as soon as she did, she sounded like she could sing anything contemporary, which is just wild how that one or two little changes, it's not like totally reworking the voice at that point. It's just go a little bit over here and then suddenly you could sound like a pro.
It's so amazing. Well, and don't you find yourself convincing students very often? It's that, well, okay, this is kind of the conversation I had with that same student. She grew up thinking that there was like, that the way you're taught in choir is the way you sing. Half the time you're just telling them that all these new sounds are okay, even though it's unconventional from what you're used to. And I told her that it's funny. I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before, but okay. When I was a young singer, right? Just in my late teens, thinking I had it made because I was so good, because I could belt those high notes, And I was thinking that the way I had learned to sing was the way. And there was no other way. Like that was right. And I had figured it out. And other people who sang differently were doing it wrong. Well, then I had a roommate say, but there's more than one right way to sing. There's not only one way. And I was like, that is not true. That is just not true. There is one way, and I know that way, and I'm right. Well, obviously, I was not right. And I just try to tell my students that, it's more about learn how the voice functions. Learn about the whole instrument, and then you can do whatever you want. Just do whatever you want, because really it's just a matter of having control over how you balance those acoustics and how you balance that, because no sound is the only right sound. And just getting them to be okay with that, then they're like, you mean I can just be myself? I feel like this has come through. Okay, I'm sure most of our listeners know who Chip and Joanna Gaines are. Yes, the fixer-upper people. Of course. Because
Waco forever.
Everybody's got to see it. I have been to Waco, and I did not appreciate it like I would now that so I read their book. I read the Magnolia story, and I just was like crying half the time. I was like, this is so sweet. And there were moments that just made me go, that's it. It was all about, stripping away the extra, stripping away the things that are getting in the way, and just being you, just being authentic, which is maybe that's just kind of on my mind. And so I'm helping my students with it, because another student, when you worked with at the master class, he was kind of having the same thing. He said, I want to sound like Tony Yazbek. I just said, okay, great. Like he wanted to work on this full, rich, raw kind of sound, So we did that. And I said, I actually want you to just back off, just kind of strip off all that extra trying too hard and just be you. Just tone it down and just try to be as real as possible. Have this conversation for real. Tell somebody for real. And as soon as he did that, it was like the sound was so full, but he was just real with it. And I was like, authenticity. That's all that matters. You just got to be real and genuine. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Tell me your
thoughts. It's interesting. I mean, the authenticity, what does that mean? What is authentic? I guess that I do look at that more as connecting to the story side of things. And so what would some of the roadblocks to authenticity be? I can't make that sound. Okay, is that a technique thing? Is that that's just not your voice? Like, I can't sound exactly like Diana Damrau. Does that mean that that's a technique thing for me? Or does that mean that it's at what level is it just technique versus that's not you? But anyway, they're all just roadblocks, right? And so some of those roadblocks we might recognize, okay, I need to go down a different street. Other ones we need to just get rid of the roadblock. So that's kind of what I look at with authenticity. And so then looking for those roadblocks helps you find what what you are good at and gets out of the way. I don't know if I'm saying this in any way that makes sense. It kind of did in my head before I started. When I focus mostly on technique with someone, they accidentally make these sounds that are just like spectacular. And then we get to have these conversations about how the sound that you just made is it. That is the goal. We need to rethink that as your new belt, that as your new whatever. We start seeing what conceptions of their voice they had before or what they thought it should be, which to me is kind of getting closer to authenticity. Did any of that make sense? I started right. I thought I got there.
You know what? You were authentically you. You were just being real and honest and explaining yourself. That's all we need. You know, like we authentically picked matching shirts today without even knowing.
Exactly.
Because
that's
we
just
were
psychic power.
We were on the amethyst vibe. I don't even know what kind of vibes amethyst gives, but it was good. No. So you were saying that how they have a preconceived notion of how they think it should sound. Okay. So kind of, I mean, generally, sometimes I see that getting in the way of authenticity, you know, because they're trying to be somebody else rather than just being them. Is that kind of what you meant?
That's exactly what I mean. And so by looking at the vocal technique things and making a sound just as not trying to be anything. It's just let's do this volume, this pitch, this tone quality, what happens, or this setup, and then create sound through it. And then what does that sound like? Because that a lot of times lets people find different sounds that they're capable of making in a way that just asking for, I want you to sound like Colm Wilkinson, or I want you to sound like you could be in Les Mis. That suddenly borrows so many other things, and then they get locked into these old conceptions. So I do think that going from the way of explorative vocal technique work and then just labeling that as different things of like, that would work really well for this genre, that would work really well for this genre, starts letting them get an idea of what their instrument sounds like with all of these different genres. And then it just starts being like, okay, this is a red crayon, this is a blue one, which is better? Who would think that? I mean, we have preferences, and as long as the crayon's not like burning your hand, then it's probably usable at some point.
What would have had to happen for a crayon to be burning your hand? I mean,
I don't know.
Circumstance for that?
I don't
Did
know.
you just take it out of the oven? I tried to
I
make
think
crayons.
Crayola's just like putting like spikes in some of these or whatever, and they're wondering why no one's using this sound or this color. And it's like, well, maybe it's the spikes on it.
Right. Well, and don't you find what's kind of fun and entertaining? So I have a teacher that I'm mentoring, and she's kind of working with a student who's really resistant to these new sounds, you know, like, so, and we all have those students, but I think just after you've been doing it for a while, you kind of let that roll off. You're like, yeah, I know that's weird to you. That's weird. Like that feels strange. But you know, when you're a new teacher, it's more shocking to you when a student is like, ooh, or they make these faces like, oh, was that okay? And they're just, do you get that, Ember? That's like, make your weirdest face, Sam.
I don't like that sound, but it sounded beautiful.
Yeah. And they're going, no, it wasn't. And you're saying, yes, it was. You need to own that. Put that in your little catalog there. That's a good one. We just labeled that. Call it whatever you want, but you need that sound. They're like, no, I don't. I don't need that sound. I'm never going to use the puke brown crayon. Like, well, wait till you color a fall scene, and then you're going to need the puke brown crayon to make those crusty brown leaves and the shadows.
Exactly.
Like a song. Because sometimes you're going to have to do a character piece, and their sounds are ugly, and you need to be okay with being ugly.
What am I thinking? Good singing shows the full breadth of the human emotion. And some human emotions are really gross. And so if we're going to use...
beautiful quote.
Yeah, put it on a t-shirt.
Good singing shows the breadth of human emotion.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. But like with that, there are some human emotions that are kind of hard to feel and hard to watch other people feel. And like so if we're going to be authentic, you might need to show some of those sounds. Even in like opera, in the most pure, we want this to sound like this specific thing all the time. The really good singers have moments that sound like really raw and really vulnerable and really gross if you just take it in isolation. But as part of a full thing, it's very useful. And so I do think that when we're just exploring someone's voice, saying like, that sounds just not good. Like, what's that going to do for anyone? It's going to make them totally avoid that sound and anything that's anything
I'm
near
a
it.
terrible singer. I should never do that.
Yeah.
Wait,
So
did you tell me I wasn't good?
I've had to really practice saying, was that easy? Yes. Cool. Let's try this other way. Was that easy? Yes. Cool. I prefer this one. I think that one sounds better. I would use that one most of the time. That's one of the things that they come to me for, is I have a more developed ear than most of my students. So I can be like, I think that most people are going to like that sound. Does that mean this other one is not usable? Absolutely not.
Like, you go for it.
And doing that, I think over and over, it starts taking away like the identification with your instrument, so that when you make a sound that some people might think is ugly, you don't think that you yourself are ugly. And all of that, I think, helps people explore their voice more, because we take away that judgment of every time you make this sound, you are a bad person, or you are a bad singer, or an ugly person. And then they're able to just experiment more. And when you experiment more a lot, then you become a better singer.
I like how you said that we have to kind of detach. But it's so funny, because without the raw emotion and that deeper connection, then the voice no matter how well you execute the steps or the sounds, without the emotional connection,
it's boring.
It's not beautiful either. Yeah. And the most beautiful sounds aren't beautiful unless there's ugly sounds to contrast them.
Yeah. The pursuit of the authenticity of being able to be on stage and be a character singing from their point of view, whether that's from your point of view or a caricature of yourself, or from a character that you're playing, whatever. We want to be like, that is a person, and not have moments that say, oh, wow, that is not a person. Like, that's a person putting on an act. I'm out. Because whenever you kind of show those things, then the audience is out. It doesn't matter how beautifully you're singing. And so I do think that just getting rid of those roadblocks, being like, here's this color, here's this color, here's this color, here's this color. You can make all of them. None of them are right. Go feel. Then people just like go, they can feel, because they know I can make all of these colors. None of them are inherently right or wrong. It's just things that I have practiced. And then I will go let myself feel. And if some of the sounds that come out of my mouth are a little bit weird, but I felt like I had prepared well enough, then it was a good performance. And that's a really hard thing, because it's so easy in the middle of a performance to be like, that sound that I made is not good. And then that takes you out, and then the audience is out.
Right. Well, and yes, falling into that trap of thinking about what you did 2 seconds ago. It's funny, even just helping, I told you I was helping the cheerleaders at the high school and the drill team at another school just work on their showmanship. And I just had to remind them, I'm like, you just got to do what you're doing while you're doing it. You can't think about the future, because that takes you out of it. You can't think about the past. You just do what you're doing while you're doing it, and the rest will take care of itself. Because, some of them, they were thinking about this hard pass that they had coming up, this hard combination, and then they would kind of retreat and like start to give up their energy. I'm like, that's just not going to work for you. You gotta like be there the whole time. It doesn't work for singers.
But it's interesting, because like, is that authentic? Is anxiety about what's about to come forward authentic?
Stop it, Sam. Stop it. Now you're going in circles.
But it's boring. You can't get through the thing, right? And so we all have anxiety about performance, about singing, about all of that. Like, I don't know anyone who was like, I don't care about this.
I've never had a panic attack or anything before going on stage or like in rehearsal. Gosh, that's never happened to me. But
never, never.
Maybe some
You're
people.
the only one. You are the only one. But everyone else is the weird ones. And
right.
Yeah, is that authentic? Yes, but you can't get through the thing. And so there's this level of like, is it authentic to the character that you are performing as? When you're in that cheer, like, you have to be that person all the way through. If you're a little anxious about what's coming forward, that is no longer authentic in the caricature that you are presenting. And so it's like, how can we get out of the way so that you can just be that person? And sometimes an anxiety riddled character is who we are playing. And we can kind of go into that a little bit more, and it makes a little bit more sense. It comes off a little more authentic. if you're playing what's the lead of Evan Hansen? If you're playing that guy, I can't remember if it's Evan or if it's the other one.
Connor?
What's that other guy's name?
The guy who
I don't
committed
know.
suicide? Or the cousin?
That one. I don't know any
I
of
don't
the
know his
characters.
name.
You know,
It's
there's
like
a lot of
Sharif or
reasons to
something,
be
I don't know.
anxious, I think, in as that character.
Probably
And so
Evan
if you
is
come
who you're
off
thinking
as
of.
probably
Evan Hansen, that guy that stars in the show.
the guy
Hansen,
who's the lead.
That one.
I don't
Ben
know.
Platt.
Is
that
that is that who he plays? That's the one.
He's so amazing. He just makes me cry.
He's very
so
good. He's very good. And it, I think, is exhausting to go into that place 8 times a week emotionally, to let yourself feel all of those things. And most people that I deal with are going into that place every time that they go to sing, just because they're so anxious about what's going to come up next, which is really hard. And so obviously, like, there is a whole slew of industry trying to help people with their anxiety. And I think we're definitely adjacent to that. We don't have all the answers. And so finding help in a lot of different ways is useful. But my biggest way of helping people with that is working on the technical side of things. It's like, okay, I can confidently say this sound and it will probably come out correctly the way that I think about it. That starts building a lot of confidence so that you can stay in the moment of whatever the character is supposed to be feeling, rather than thinking, am I going to be able to make the sound that I'm supposed to in 4 measures?
Yes.
For those cheerleaders, like, I mean, just drill that really hard thing more until you can do it without thinking about it, I guess. I don't know.
So it's not there. I mean, that's a different thing. But, well, it's funny because, when I was first teaching, I taught my little sister for a while. I was like, well, you need to do it this way. And of course, I was still really young and figuring things out. And she was, I just basically made her take lessons from me because I wanted someone to teach. And she's like, she would kind of luck up before something. And she's like, well, but I don't know how I'm going to do it when I get there. I don't know what I'm going to decide. I'm like, well, do it this way. And I was still trying to figure out exactly, because I probably gave her a different thing to do each time, which now I know that that's not really helpful for students learning to sing. They just need, like, just try this time. Okay, let's try this again. Let's try this again. Just do it this way, instead of like, you could do it this way or this way or this way or this way. That's really confusing to young singers. And so, she would kind of get in that anxious place and just be like, well, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to hit it when I get there. I haven't decided yet. And so that leaves you in that limbo place of what do I do? And so, yes, that definitely can take you out of being able to create the character.
Going back to the idea of, like, disliking a sound, everyone has their own right to dislike a sound. And we can't control what other people are going to think about our stuff. And so if that's our goal all the time, like, we're going to be disappointed all the time. I make some really, really ugly sounds. I work on some... I don't know. Like, you have to, for certain genres, you have to make some sounds that a lot of people are going to be like, I just don't want that. I saw there's this coffee shop or something that, to deter certain people from loitering, they have started playing opera at full blast. Oh no, it's like a 7-Eleven. And they're just playing opera all the time. And everyone's like, okay, I'll just get my stuff and leave. I will not hang out. I saw another... what
they play, like the bad guy in the movies. They always play the opera in the background. Have you noticed that? Like, like Jack Reacher films and stuff. Yeah.
It's like, people seem to really hate opera. People seem to really hate metal. People seem to really hate rap. People seem to really hate country. And it's like, you go ask anyone, and there's like probably one of those things that they just really don't like. Does that mean that Pavoratti is a bad singer because so many people just don't like listening? No. Does that mean that that Linkin Park is bad music? No. And so with this, we have to recognize, like, is this a me problem or a you problem? It's like me being annoyed by my dogs barking, or you by your kids crying, whatever. Is that a me problem or a them problem?
It's only when it's incessant. It's only if it
goes
on for more than
exactly. And so, like, within those situations, it's like, okay, I can either accept that Molly is a beagle. She is going to yell a little bit. I got into this myself.
I
can
chose this.
can I accept this and not get really frustrated because it's not her fault? Or can I train her to be a little bit more quiet sometimes? Sure. But like within that, she's still gonna make sounds I don't like every once in a while. And she shouldn't feel bad about that. Like, I don't want her to feel bad about being who she is. In the same way, us as singers, like if we make some sounds and we feel like we're getting our point across and all of this, there are going to be a lot of people who don't like it. But can we own that and be like, that doesn't matter?
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because you know the one we did about singing like Kristen Chenoweth?
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually read the comments, but I was just going through the comments one day and somebody said very badly ? And I was like, oh, that's funny. Somebody like really doesn't like Kristen Chenoweth the way she sings. And like, that's totally fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can't really do anything about how they feel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It was just funny to me because it took me a second to figure out what they meant. I was like, huh? Because it was like just those two words. And I was like, oh, huh, that's funny. But
Yeah.
I get it. Not everybody likes that sound. You know,
Not everyone likes
gonna
that
like my
sound.
sound. It's
Exactly.
fine.
And so much of the time I'm just like, that is a sound that works. Like, that is a totally usable sound. And I'll say that all the time. Does that feel good? Cool. Then it's a totally usable sound. Let's make these other ones. And then as people get better and better at distancing themselves from this, then it's like my choice seems to be just shower praise on the sounds that I think, like whenever they make a sound that I really like. And then they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll make this one a lot more. I guess I'll make this one a lot more.
I love it. Well, I even tell my students, especially even in an exercise or whenever I tried, and actually I learned this from Dean. He doesn't even know he taught this to me. But years and years ago, I was listening back to a lesson that I had with him. He said something positive. He said, yeah, that's it. I like that. And it was the words, I like that I adopted into my own teaching. And I found that to have a huge impact on my students, to say, I like that. I like that. Even though whether I like it or not isn't necessarily the end goal, but to give that gives them so much confidence to know, oh, I like that. Just when you say, I like it when you do that, I do that again. That was really good. That worked. You know, just having that reiterated, I think, is so valuable for students. They just really latch on to that because every singer wants to be liked. You know, even if, like we're talking about, that's kind of irrelevant because you're not going to be liked by everybody. But just knowing that, like, getting that positive feedback does so much for their ability to repeat those sounds and makes them go, oh, yeah, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
I got this. I got this.
And then be more willing to experiment with other sounds and then just get as many sounds as they can make. And then they can go just be themselves. Because that's what like we really want from our really high-end singers, right? We don't want... I had someone ask me this week about trying to sound like someone else and like what the value with that would be. Because it's like, if you could just go sound like Rhianna, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? And it's like, well, yeah, okay, Rihanna's a wonderful singer. She exists already. And anytime that you start making a sound that is like, that sounds like Rhianna, one, you'll get a lot of people saying, you're copying Rhianna, which, yeah. So there's that part too. And if they aren't like, you're copying Rhianna, then maybe they'll just get 10 seconds into your song and be like, this reminds me of this Rhianna song, and go listen to it instead of giving you a chance. And so you're always fighting to be someone else, and no one wants that to happen. It's very vulnerable to be authentic.
The last 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm too much like somebody else that's already out there. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
But at the
really,
same time, like, I feel like I have battled my whole career wanting to sound like 5 different people. It's like, I really want to sound like Justin Timberlake and Pavoratti and like 5 other singers. And when I can't make all of the exact sounds that they make, I somehow feel bad about myself. When none of them want to sound like any of the others or are capable of, they're just really good at sounding like themselves. And so that's something I've had to really work on, is like, what are the qualities of my voice that I like? What do I sound like? Am I good at making imitations of other people? Not really, because I just don't practice it anymore, because I just don't see much use.
Well, then that's good though, but you have all those influences that give you your own.
Exactly. And that's the difference, is like, we want to be influenced by everyone. That's how we can make things that are interesting and build upon the shoulders of others. But we don't want to do it by trying to sound exactly like them. That's inauthentic to me. And people really want to listen to things they find authentic.
And we find authenticity by connecting with the soul, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just like feeling so philosophical today.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe. If you are listening to this on Apple or Spotify, please go leave us a review. If you're not, please go over to those and leave us a review. We're coming out with more episodes, every other week or so. So come back and learn more about voice teachers, how to be one, and how to learn from them.
Thank you for listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast, brought to you by IFTOM, International Voice Teachers of Mix. Your co-hosts are Sam Johnson and Aimee Geddes. Learn more about IFTOM at iftom.org and find Sam Johnson at vocalese.net and Aimee Geddes at breakthrough-studios.com. Voiceover and theme song by Maz Mazak, and this podcast is edited by Amber. You have been listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast.